Apple may still be ironing out the hardware details of its long-rumored iPhone fold chasing goals like a near-invisible crease and a thinner, lighter build, but the real make-or-break factor won't be aluminum, hinges, or glass. It'll be software. With WWDC 2026 approaching fast, Apple has a narrow window to prove that iOS 27 is ready for a foldable future. Because a foldable iPhone can't survive on novelty alone. The foldable market is already packed with devices that look impressive in renders and even better on store shelves. The only way Apple wins is the way it always wins, by selling an experience so smooth, so intuitive, and so obvious that competitors feel clunky by comparison. And that's exactly why iOS 27 has to show, clearly and confidently, that Apple understands what a foldable iPhone is actually. For if the iPhone Fold is truly heading toward a notebook-style design opening to reveal a roughly 7.8-inch inner display, then Apple is no longer building a phone that occasionally acts like a mini tablet. It's building a hybrid that must feel natural in both roles, instantly, with zero friction. Here are the 3 iOS 27 features that will ultimately decide whether the iPhone Fold becomes Apple's next blockbuster or an expensive experiment. First, apps must scale perfectly, instantly, and intelligently. Foldables live or die by app optimization. When you go from the smaller outer display to the larger inner screen, your apps can't just zoom. They have to reflow. Layouts need to expand with purpose, not simply stretch. That means iOS 27 needs foldable wear, app behavior that feels native the moment the device opens. The ideal experience is simple. You start a task on the cover screen, unfold, and the app seamlessly adapts into a richer layout, more content, better spacing, smarter panels without glitches, reloads, or awkward letterboxing. And Apple has to do this in a way that matches how the iPhone Fold will realistically be used. Leaks and dummy units suggest a strong emphasis on landscape usage, which changes the entire equation. Apple can't just copy iPad optimizations and call it a day, because the ergonomics and default orientation are different. What needs to happen is deeper. Foldable first design, true landscape first layouts that feel intentional, dual pane, views where they actually make sense, messages plus conversation lists, mail plus inbox, notes plus folder lists, UI elements that don't float awkwardly in space on a wider canvas, consistent behavior when switching between portrait and landscape, so users don't feel like they're using 2 different devices. The iPhone Fold must make every popular app feel like it was built for it, because if it doesn't, people will treat the big inner screen like a gimmick instead of a reason to upgrade. Second, dynamic multitasking that's actually built for foldables. The iPhone still doesn't offer true multitasking the way power users want. The iPad does and has for years through features like split view, slide over, picture-in-picture, and later stage manager. But the iPhone Fold can't just inherit iPad multitasking and shrink it down. A foldable sits in a unique middle ground, bigger than a phone, smaller than a tablet, and often used in landscape. That means multitasking must be flexible, fast, and fluid without turning everything into tiny, unusable windows. Apple's challenge is to create a multitasking system that lets people do more without making the interface feel like a mini laptop stuffed into a phone screen. Android foldables have already shown what works. Some of the best multitasking experiences on foldables don't rely on a window jungle. They use dynamic, stacked, swipeable workspaces where apps stay large and usable, and you can fluidly move between 2 visible apps and a third just beneath the surface. That's the kind of interaction iOS 27 needs to introduce. Seamless 2 apps side by side. Multitasking that feels effortless, a smart way to manage a third app without crushing everything into tiny panis gesture-based transitions that keep your place and preserve Context and intuitive mental models so normal users understand it in seconds, because on a foldable, multitasking isn't an advanced feature. It's the point. If Apple doesn't deliver a foldable native multitasking system, the iPhone Fold risks becoming a big screen that people still use like a regular iPhone, just larger and heavier. Third, an iPhone desktop mode that turns the Fold into a real productivity machine. This is the potential secret weapon for years. Samsung DeX has been the gold standard for turning a phone into a desktop-like experience. Others have followed with their own versions. And once you've used a good desktop mode in a real situation, traveling, working remotely, dealing with an emergency presentation, you realize how powerful it is. If Apple wants the iPhone Fold to dominate, iOS 27 should introduce a true iPhone desktop mode, not a screen mirroring trick, not a limited external display feature. A real desktop-style interface when connected to a monitor, with keyboard and mouse trackpad support that feels like Apple designed it to be used daily. And Apple has a massive advantage here. Its ecosystem. Continuity is already one of Apple's strongest selling points. If Apple builds desktop mode correctly, it becomes more than a productivity feature. It becomes a platform bridge. Your iPhone Fold becomes a pocket computer when you need it. Integrates with Mac workflows. Instead of competing with them, it pairs naturally with iPad style productivity without forcing you to carry an iPad. It sets the stage for future devices, including rumored wearables like Apple Glasses, where your phone as your computer makes even more sense. Desktop mode also gives the iPhone Fold a clear reason to exist beyond the bigger screen. It turns the Fold into a tool, not just a luxury. WWDC 2026 will likely spotlight Apple Intelligence, Siri, and AI-powered features. But if Apple wants the iPhone Fold to be taken seriously, iOS 27 must deliver the fundamentals that make foldables worth buying, because hardware will get people to look. Software will decide whether they stay.